Today, we'll be keying this plant using the Jepson eFlora, beginning with the key to California plant families. Specimens available for examination without flowers, these either not present on the specimen or not produced at all, or specimens available for examination with flowers, often also producing seeds within fruits. In this case, we have an angiosperm with flowers. Specimens with only cleistogamous flowers, fruits developing without flowers opening, or specimens with open flowers. And we do have a plant with open flowers. Specimens with unisexual flowers of only one kind, staminate or pistillate, but not both. Plants dioecious or monoecious, or specimens with bisexual flowers or with both staminate and pistillate flowers on same or different individuals. Plants bisexual, dioecious, or monoecious, occasionally with mixture of bisexual and unisexual flowers. In this case, our plants are clearly bisexual with both pistils and stamens. Pistils 2 or more per flower, carpels more than one free to the base, or pistil 1 per flower, carpel 1 or carpels more than one fused at least proximally. In this case, these are 3 carpels fused at the very base of a single pistil. Perianth none, or in a single whorl, appearing to be either sepals or petals, but not both, sometimes reduced to scale-like or bristle-like structures, or perianth in 2 or more whorls, generally both sepals and petals, or perianth parts spiraled 2 or more times around floral axis. In this case, the perianth parts are very similar, but you can see from looking at the underside of the flower that there are 2 distinct whorls. Perianth parts 2 or 3 per whorl, or perianth parts generally 4 or 5 per whorl, rarely some other number of whorls differing in number of parts, or in a spiral with the number of parts indefinite. So we do have whorls of 3. This brings us to group 16, perianth parts in 2 or more whorls, parts 2 or 3 per whorl, pistil 1. Ovary fully inferior, or ovary superior or partially inferior. In this case, we have a superior ovary, which you can see here because the attachment of the perianth is at the base of the ovary. Stem nodes with small, dry, sometimes spiny spurred, scale-like leaves that subtend 1 to 20 thread-like, needle-like, or ovate, leaf-like branches, erect to sprawling herb, subshrub, or twining vine, Asparagaceae. Or stem nodes without small, dry, scale-like leaves that subtend leaf-like branches. In this case, we do not have small, dry, or scale-like leaves at the nodes. Leaves needle-like, abaxially grooved, low shrub, Ericaceae, or leaves generally not needle-like, generally not abaxially grooved, herb to tree. In this case, we do have an herb without needle-like leaves. Plant submersed aquatic, leaves very thin, one-veined, opposite or whorled, flowers generally unisexual, Hydrocaritaceae. Or plant terrestrial, or if aquatic, leaves not very thin, one-veined, and opposite or whorled. In this case, we do have a terrestrial plant. Leaf venation pinnate or palmate, smaller veins generally forming a network, occasionally only midvein evident. Or leaf venation parallel, sometimes in wider leaves, several larger veins originating from leaf base, but smaller veins parallel to them and not forming a network. In this case, we have a clear example of parallel venation. Shrub, tree, or densely leafy rosette plant, leaves more or less sword-like or more or less grass-like, fibrous and or fleshy, persisting for more than 1 year. Or herb, leaves generally thin, generally not persisting, sometimes more or less cylindric. In this case, we do have an herb with fairly delicate vegetative growth that will last a single season. Sepals and petals clearly different, or sepals and petals very similar. So there are some differences in the width and the shape and the position, but generally these petals are very similar to these sepals. Perianth parts scale-like, green to brown or more or less purple-black or tinged more or less red-purple. Or perianth parts petal-like, generally not green to brown or more or less purple-black or tinged more or less red-purple. We'll go with the second option here with petal-like perianth parts. Inflorescence and umbel, rarely flower solitary or in short, dense raceme. Leaves all basal, arising from bulb or corm. Or inflorescence various, often a raceme or panicle. If flowers and umbels stem more or less leafy or with scale-like bracts. Leaves basal and or cauline, underground parts various. In this case, the inflorescence is an elongate raceme. Perianth parts proximally more or less fused into tube, or perianth parts free or nearly so. We have free or nearly free perianth parts. Leaves mostly or all cauline, or leaves all basal or basal and cauline. We have mostly basal leaves here. All or some filaments densely hairy, or filaments glabrous, or expanded filament bases puberulent. We have glabrous filaments. Styles 3, or style 1 or 0, and stigmas sessile. In this case, we have clearly 3 styles, and you can look carefully because they look very similar to the filaments of the anthers, but you can tell by the position in the center and the lack of the stamen or the anther on top of the stamen. So these are the filaments and these are the styles. Stem glabrous, Melanthiaceae, or stem glandular, Tophieldiaceae. This is a glabrous stem, which puts us in the family Melanthiaceae. Now we'll move on to the key to the species and genera of Melanthiaceae. Leaves linear or leaves lanceolate to widely ovate. We have linear leaves here. Leaves persistent after 1 year, wiry, tough, cauline leaves many, reduced upward. Xerophyllum, or leaves deciduous after 1 year, not wiry, not tough, cauline leaves 0 or 1 to 2, much reduced. In this case, we do have one cauline leaf, but mostly basal leaves and delicate in texture. Perianth parts pale green yellow to more or less purple without glands, ovary partly inferior at base, stenanthium, or perianth parts white to more or less yellow with 1 to 2 distinct glands near base, ovary superior, Toxicoscordion. You can see the glands very clearly here, and these perianth parts are white to yellow. This brings us to the genus Toxicoscordion. Take a moment to read the description to make sure it agrees with the plant. And also note that this genus, members of this genus were treated as Zygodinus in the previous Jepson manual. Key to the species of Toxicoscordion. Perianth parts 2 to 8 millimeters. Stamens longer than or equal to the perianth. Perianth parts 4 to 15 millimeters. Stamens generally less than the perianth, more or less equal to perianth and Toxicoscordion fontanum. So the stamen is much shorter than the perianth parts, and we are approaching 15 millimeters in length. Bract, 2 to 8 millimeters, less than 1/2 of the pedicel, filaments curved, thin, fruit width 1/2 fruit length, Toxicoscordion brevibracteatum, or bracts 3 to 50 millimeters, 1/3 to 3 times the pedicel, filaments straight, proximally thick, fruit elongate, width generally less than 1/2 length. So here is the bract, and here is the pedicel. So the bract is much longer than the pedicel, and you can see the base of these filaments are thick proximally. Flowers bisexual, except on lower inflorescence branches, staminate or with stunted ovary, perianth parts 5 to 12 millimeters, outer often persistently reflexed below fruit, bulbs often clumped, Sierra Nevada foothills, Toxicoscordion exaltatum. Or flowers bisexual, perianth parts 4 to 15 millimeters, outer not persistently reflexed below fruit, bulbs not clumped, not Sierra Nevada foothills. So we do have all flowers bisexual, and the perianth parts are approaching 15 millimeters. Perianth more or less bell-shaped, parts 4 to 12 millimeters, ovate to elliptic, bracts 5 to 35 millimeters, inflorescence narrow, often pyramid-shaped in youth. Toxicoscordion fontanum. Or perianth rotate, parts 5 to 15 millimeters, widely ovate, bracts 5 to 50 millimeters, inflorescence wide. And this is a very widespread species, Toxicoscordion fremontii. So these corollas are rotate. So this brings us to the species Toxicoscordion fremontii, and you can compare with the illustrations and with the photos and carefully read the description. And this plant is very widespread within the California floristic province. Thanks for watching.